Welcome to a special edition of SOS. My name is Jonathan Davis, and today we're discussing the 2022 Major League Baseball Hall of Fame class. And the only inductee this year was David Ortiz, best known as Big Papi, for his time with the Boston Red Sox. And first, before I get into the elephants in the room, which is Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens not making it, I want to say congrats to Big Papi for making the Hall of Fame, one of the best hitters of all time. And as great as he was in the regular season, we all know that he turned it up a notch in the postseason, winning 3 World Series with the Boston Red Sox. Now, when we look at Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, to me, they are no doubt Hall of Famers. To me, it is a tragedy that they weren't inducted into the Hall of Fame in their 10th and final year of eligibility on the traditional ballot. Barry Bonds, one of the best hitters of all time, the all-time league leader in home runs. Nobody's drew more walks than Barry Bonds, a 444 career on-base percentage. And then on the defensive side, he was an 8-time Gold Glove winner, just one of the best players, if not the best player all around in baseball history. When you look at Roger Clemens, 354 wins in his career, 4,600 strikeouts, 7 Cy Youngs with 4 different teams, just one of the best pitchers of all time as well. And like I said, in their 10th year of eligibility, final year on the ballot, along with other players such as Sammy Sosa and Curt Schilling, the Baseball Writers Association decided to not put them in the Hall of Fame. You need 75% of the votes from the baseball writers to get in the Hall of Fame. Barry Bonds got 66% of those votes, the highest he's gotten in the 10 years that he was on the ballot. Roger Clemens got 65.2%, the highest that he's gotten in the 10 years that he was on the ballot. And like I said, I just think it's an absolute travesty that they did not make the Hall of Fame. I think myself, baseball fans everywhere, and just people who know the game would agree that you can't tell the story of baseball without those 2 players, that they should be in the Hall of Fame. And the reason that they didn't make it is because PED suspicion. But there was a time really where there was a steroid era in baseball, and that was kind of championed, the steroid use and just kind of all the power that we saw and all the great baseball we saw. It was championed, and now these players are being shunned for something that really probably everybody was doing in that era. But yet we're penalizing the great players for it, while probably middle of the road or average players that use steroids kind of just get to live the rest of their lives in peace. While players like Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, who we should be celebrating forever, we're going to make them the faces of the steroid era of baseball. And I just don't think that's fair. And I know maybe for the baseball writers whose kind of job is to preserve the purity and the legacy of the Baseball Hall of Fame, it may be hard for them to separate the art from the artist and say, okay, yeah, these may be 2 of the best players of all time. They may have 2 of the best resumes of all time, but it's tainted because they cheated. But I think when you look at these 2 players, maybe if you wanted to make that argument for a fringe Hall of Famer or a player who may have not been a Hall of Famer due to PEDs, and PEDs pushed them over the edge, I don't think this is an argument that you can make the case for when it comes to Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. Like I said, anybody who's watched baseball, and I think even the baseball writers off the record would agree that these are 2 of the greatest players of all time. It's a shame that they may have not used PEDs, but they definitely didn't need it. Like I said, I read off the stats earlier, 2 of the greatest resumes ever in baseball. And I think that baseball writers' egos have kind of gotten in the way, and the system is flawed. And I don't know how you fix it, but it's kind of similar to Terrell Owens in the NFL, right? Where Terrell Owens had to wait 3 years to get in the NFL Hall of Fame, although he was a no doubt first ballot Hall of Famer because how people felt about him, how he carried himself off the field, and things of that nature. And I just think baseball writers have put in their egos in this too much. And I think they went out of their way to make an example out of Roger Clemens, to make an example out of Barry Bonds, and say, we're not going to be the ones to put them, in the Hall of Fame. And like I said, just, you can't tell the story of baseball without them. And also, I think it's unfair to punish them, to kind of put the character clause on them and say, we're going to make them the faces of the steroid era and not put them in the Baseball Hall of Fame, when you have people that are openly racist in the Hall of Fame. You have people that have been accused and convicted of domestic violence and sexual assault in the Hall of Fame, and also players in the Hall of Fame that have cheated in the past in different ways. And their legacies have been preserved and protected in ways that the Baseball Writers Association and Major League Baseball has chosen not to do for players like Sammy Sosa, Curt Schilling, Roger Clemens, and Barry Bonds. And to put it in perspective for people that don't watch baseball, imagine if the NFL Hall of Fame made Tom Brady wait 10 years and then told him that he wasn't going to make the Hall of Fame. Or for the NBA, imagine if LeBron James or Michael Jordan had to wait 10 years and they didn't make the Hall of Fame. That's similar to what's happened with Major League Baseball not putting in Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. So January 25th, 2022, I believe is going to be a dark day in baseball. I think that the credibility of the Baseball Hall of Fame, Major League Baseball, and the baseball writers has all took a dip. Just because everybody who knows the game, who saw the game, who's been a part of the game, knows what Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens meant to this game. And for them not to be in the Hall of Fame really just is a travesty. And I think it's a dark day for baseball, January 25th, 2022. Once again, congratulations to David Ortiz, Big Papi. I'm glad that he made it in the Hall of Fame. And I just hate that it came on the day where everybody's discussing Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds. It's almost as if Big Papi didn't make it to the Hall of Fame. Have no fear, for the people that are outraged like me that they're not in the Hall of Fame. They still have another chance, thankfully. The Veterans Committee will meet in December of 2022. And they have to get 75% of that vote if they're on that ballot, which they probably will be, which will be 12 out of 16 votes. It's a lot easier than getting 75% out of 400 voters. So hopefully we'll be talking about Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, and maybe some other players being Hall of Famers in 2023. But as we sit here today and we discuss it, it's just an absolute travesty that Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds aren't in the Hall of Fame. And I think the baseball writers need to take a look at themselves and check their egos and realize that they have a job to do, which is put the best players in the Hall of Fame, not be the gatekeepers for who they think were the best people in baseball. And Major League Baseball needs to fix its system, because when you have two of the best players of all time not in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame, I think that says a lot about your sport and who you have voting for the Hall of Fame. Like I said, it would be a travesty if Tom Brady wasn't in the Hall of Fame, but the NFL would never make that mistake. And it would be a travesty if LeBron James wasn't in the NBA Hall of Fame, but the NBA would never make that mistake. So the baseball writers need to check their egos at the door, and Major League Baseball needs to check its system. But tell us what you think. Are Roger Clemens, Barry Bonds, Sammy Sosa, Curt Schilling, are they Hall of Famers? Did the baseball writers get it right? Should these players be excluded for PED suspicions and other things in accordance to the character clause, which is in the Hall of Fame? Let us know what you think in the comments. And thank you for tapping into another edition of SOS, where we're not just accurate, we're spot on. Thank you.